an engaged couple vanished without a trace from their California beach house, disappearing on a Friday night as if they had simply walked into the ocean and never returned for 5 years. Investigators believe they had drowned in the dangerous coastal waters, swept away by unexpected currents during a nighttime swim, but then a recreational diver. Exploring the reef discovers something wedged deep in the coral. A waterproof case containing unexpected incidents that proved the truth was more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Morning fog hung thick over San Francisco as Janine Caldwell stirred her third cup of coffee, staring at the spreadsheets on her laptop screen. At 35, she'd built a comfortable life as a financial analyst, far removed from the coastal town where her sister had vanished 5 years ago. The apartment silence was broken by her phone's sharp ring. Ms. Caldwell, this is Detective Raymond Flores. From the Monterey County Sheriff's Office. Janine's hand tightened on the phone. Any call about Meredith still made her heart race. Even after all these years, I'm calling about your sister's case. A recreational diver found something this morning, approximately 300 yards from the beach house. We need you to come identify if it belongs to your sister. What did they find? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. A waterproof phone case, bright yellow, wedged in the coral reef. The diver brought it to our marine patrol station. Can you make the drive today? I'll leave right now. The two drive down Highway 101 to Metro. Felt both endless and too quick. Janine's mind cycled through the same thoughts that had haunted her for 5 years. Meredith and David, both 28 then, had been so happy, so ready to start their married life together. The engagement party at the beach house was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, they'd simply vanished on a Friday night, leaving no trace except their cars in the driveway. The Marine Patrol Station sat on Thorarf, its weathered wood siding blending with the fishing boats and tourist shops. Detective Flores met her at the entrance, a man in his 50s with kind eyes and the patient demeanor of someone who delivered too much bad news. Thank you for coming so quickly, he said Ledinger through narrow hallways that smelled of salt and diesel fuel. The forensics team has already prosecuted Gates' case, but we need confirmation on the contents. The evidence room was sterile white, a stark contrast to the rustic exterior. On the metal table sat a bright yellow waterproof case, the kind kayakers and swimmers used to protect their valuables. Elodie opened. Its contents were arranged precisely on the table. Janine's breath caught. There was Meredith's phone, its rose gold case still pristine after 5 years underwater. Beside it lay a small white plastic stick, a pregnancy test. Oh my God, Janine gasped, sinking into vector. Detective Flores offered. She was pregnant. That's what we're trying to determine. As still functional, these waterproof cases are remarkably effective. We charged it. And he turned its phone toward her. The lock screen photo showed Meredith and David on that very beach, her sister's strawberry blonde hair whipping in the wind as she laughed. David's arms wrapped around her from behind his dark curly hair, while both of them glowing with happiness. It was exactly as Janet remembered it. That's definitely her phone, Janine confirmed, her voice thick. He took that photo at their engagement party 3 months before they disappeared. Detective Flores nodded, making notes. The last activity on the phone was that Friday evening, a few texts, some photos from earlier in the day. Nothing thought indicated any plans to leave or any distress. The pregnancy test, Jana Eccleden, look away from it. Does it show the display has degraded after 5 years underwater? But our forensics team believes it was likely positive. People don't typically keep negative tests, specially secured in a waterproof case with their phone. This discovery changes things significantly. Miss Caldwell changes things. How? The detective leaned back, choosing his words carefully. The initial investigation concluded rather quickly, within days actually. The assumption was that your sister and her fiancé were swept out by the current. It happens more often than people realize along this coastline, both of them disappearing together with no signs of struggle at the house, no financial troubles, no relationship issues. Anyone knew about drowning seemed the only logical explanation, but now a pregnancy would have been a major life event. The fact that she had this test with her protected in this case suggests she considered intermittent. We'll need to re-examine everything, their relationships, their plans, anyone who might have known a Booth pregnancy. I'll need you to think back. Miss Caldwell, did your sister mention anything about expecting a child? Janine shook her head slowly. Nothing. Talked every week, sometimes more. She would have told me. Her eyes burned with those tears. She would have been so happy. They both wanted children. I'm sorry to drag this all up again, Detective Flores said gently, but this is the first real evidence we've had in 5 years. The diver who found it said it was wedged deep in the coral, probably been there since the night they disappeared. The current could have carried it from the beach. You're going to reopen the case? It never technically closed, just went cold. Beauties, this warrants a fresh look at everything. I'll need you to stay available while you're in town. Are you planning to visit the beach house? Janine hadn't thought that far ahead, but now the idea took hold. "Ah yes, I still have a key," the caretaker maintains it. "Harold's good man. If you find anything that might be relevant photos, let her say anything that might shed light on the pregnancy or their state of mind that week, please let me know. Immediate tell yes." Janine left the station, the weight of this new knowledge pressed down on her. Meredith had been pregnant. Her sister had been carrying a child when she vanished into the Pacific on what should have been a celebration weekend with their closest friends, the image of that small white test stick preserved like a message in a bottle for 5 years would haunt her for a long time. To commute the drive from Monterey to Carmel by the sea took only 20 minutes, but Janine felt a mile weighing on her shoulders. The coastal route wound through cypress groves and past dramatic cliffs where the Pacific crashed against ancient rocks. She'd avoided this drive for 3 years, since the memorial service where they'd scattered symbolic flowers into the waves for Meredith and David. Beach house sat on a prime lot overlooking Carmel Beach, a 2-story craftsman with weathered cedar shingle sand white trim. Even from the driveway, Janine could see how meticulously it had been maintained. The garden bloomed with the same purple salvia and orange poppies Meredith had planted as a frozen in perpetual spring. Harold emerged from the side yard before she'd even turned off the engine. In his 60s now, the caretaker moved with the gait of someone who'd spent decades battling coastal weather. His weathered face cracked into a sad smile when he recognized her. "Miss Janine," he said, removing his work gloves. "Been a long time." "Hello, Harold. The place looks beautiful," he nodded with quiet pride. "Mr. Marcus Ashford, he makes sure of that, pays me regular every month like clockwork. Sask's got to keep it ready, you know, in case he trailed off, unable to finish the thought that after 5 years seemed more like denial than hope. "That's very generous of him," Janine managed. "He's been a good man, Mr. Ashford." Honoring David's memory like that, checks on the place himself sometimes. Make sure everything's just as they left it. Can't be easy for him either, losing his best friend and business partner like that. Janine fingered the key in her pocket, the one she'd never had the heart to throw away. "I need to go inside her for a little while." Of course, you take all the time you need. I'll be out here if you need anything." The front door opened to a rush of memories. The living room remained exactly as Meredith had decorated it, coastal chic, with white slip-covered furniture, driftwood accents, and thoughts abstract ocean paintings she'd collected from local artists. Everything was clean, dusty, as if the occupants had just stepped out for groceries. Moved through the rooms like a ghost herself. The kitchen still had Meredith's collection of sea glasses, in a bowl on the counter. The refrigerator hummed, empty but functional. In the dining room, the table was set for 6, the dinner party that never happened. Climbed the stairs, each creak familiar yet strange. The master bedroom door stood slightly ajar. Inside, the king bed was made with military precision throw pillows, arranged just as Meredith would have done. The room smelled faintly of lavender sachets, Harold's touch to keep it fresh. Janen's, with the obvious places, nightstands, the dresser top, everything was orderly, undisturbed. She moved to the oaken closet, where Meredith's clothes hung in color-coordinated rows. Running her hands along the fabrics brought tears. These were the outfits her sister would never wear again, the shoes that would never dance at her wedding. In the back of the closet, a built-in dresser held accessories. Janine pulled open drawer after drawer, belts, sunglasses, jewelry boxes, all perfectly arranged. In the bottom drawer, under a stack of silk scarves, her fingers found something that didn't belong. A leather-bound journal, Meredith's journal. Joni recognized it immediately. She'd given it to her sister for Christmas the year before she disappeared. Her hands trembled as she carried it to the bed, sitting on the edge to flip through the pages. The entries started sporadically, thoughts about wedding planning, fun anecdotes about David's attempts at cooking, but the final week's entries were different, more frequent, more urgent. Monday, the test was positive. 3 tests actually. I had to be sure. David doesn't know yet. I'm terrified and thrilled and completely overwhelmed. We always said we'd wait until after the wedding, until the business was more stable, but maybe this is the universe telling us it's time. Tuesday, David came home stressed again. Another fight with Marcus about the expansion. Wants to open offices in London and Tokyo within the year. The numbers make my head spin. We'd need to leverage everything. Take on investors. David thinks it's too much too fast. I heard them shouting in the home office. Marcus accused David of holding him back. David said Marcus cared more about money than friendship. They've been like brothers for so long. This is tearing them apart. Tweedenstee still haven't told David about the baby, waiting for the right moment. Maybe I'm awkward, but I want him calm when he hears not wound up about Marcus in the business. Started planning how to announce it at Friday's dinner. Marcus will be there. Maybe the baby news will help everyone put things in perspective. Aimley, first, always Thursday, overheard David on the phone with Theloir. He's thinking about buying Marcus out or being bought out himself. My heart broke listening to him. 10 years building innovate tech together, and now this, we know. I tell them about the baby tomorrow, maybe it will remind them what really matters. David will be such a wonderful father. I know he'll choose stability for our child over Marcus' grand ambitions. Just hope. Marcus understands. The final entry was dated Friday morning. Tonight's the night bought a little onesie that says coming soon, going to put it in a gift box for after dinner. Praying this brings everyone together instead of driving them further apart. David keeps asking why. I'm nervous about a simple dinner party. If only he knew by tomorrow everything will be different. Or little family beginning just as another chapter ends. Janine's vision blurred as she photographed each page with shaking hands. Her sister had been caught between her loyalty to David and her hopes for their future, trying to navigate the disintegration of a business partnership that was destroying a friendship. That pregnancy, that precious secret, had been Meredith's. Hoped for peace offering. A soft knock on the bedroom door made her jump. Harold stood in the doorway, concern creasing his features. Just checking if you need anything, Miss Janine. Water. I could make some tea. I'm fine. Harold, thank you. She closed the journal, holding it against her chest, just looking for some closure. He nodded, understanding in his weathered eyes. Yo, take all the time you need. I'll be outside if you change your mind about that. Tiefter. He left. Janine sat in the silence of her sister's bedroom, the journal heavy in her hands. Meredith had Wakadinto, that Friday dinner, carrying not just the secret of new life, but the hope that it would heal the growing rift between David and Marcus. Instead, she'd vanished into the night, taking all her secrets with her, until now the sound of tires on gravel drew Janine's attention. To the window, a black Tesla Model S pulled into the driveway, its sleek limousine congruous against the rustic beach house setting. She recognized the driver immediately, even before he stepped out. Marcus Ashford emerged from the car with the same confident bearing she remembered, though 5 years had a dead touches of gray to his dark hair at the temples. At 38, he still cut an impressive figurine. His tailored navy suit, the casual wealth of Silicon Valley success, evident in every detail from his Italian leather shoes to his titanium watch. His face registered genuine surprise when he spotted her through the window. By the time she reached the front door, he was already climbing the porch steps, arms extended. Janine, my God, I had no idea you were in town. His embrace was warm, enveloping her inexpensive cologne and what felt like sincere affection. Harold texted that someone was at the house. I thought maybe it was the real estate agent. I've had a few inquiries over the years. Hello, Marcus. She pulled back, studying his face. The boyish charm that had made him such a successful entrepreneur had matured into something more refined, though his dark eyes held the same intensity she remembered. Come in, please. She gestured vaguely toward the interior. Of course, I don't want to intrude. I just wanted to make sure everything was all right. He followed her inside, his gaze sweeping the familiar space. God, it's like stepping back in time, isn't it? That's actually why I'm here. Janine settled onto the couch, and Marcus took the chair across from her. There's been a development. A diver found Meredith's phone this morning in a waterproof case near the reef. Marcus went very still, her phone with something else. Janine watched his face carefully. A pregnancy test. What? The shock seemed genuine, his hand going to his chest. Meredith was pregnant. It appears so. The police are reopening the investigation. Marcus leaned back, running a hand through his hair in a gesture she remembered from years ago when he was processing difficult information. Just, I had no idea. She never said anything. Would you like some water? Janine offered, needing a moment herself. Let's go out on the deck. I could use the air. They moved outside, where the afternoon sun painted the ocean in shades of turquoise and navy. The deck furniture remained as it always had been. The thick dining set, where they'd shared so many meals, the comfortable loungers where Meredith had loved to read. Marcus stood at the railing, hands gripping the weathered wood. That weekend was supposed to be a celebration. We just landed the text-off contract, the biggest deal in our company's history. David and I had worked 18-hour days for 2 months. Close it. He told you about the dinner party. Of course, Meredith planned everything. She said she had something special to announce too, but I assumed it was about the wedding venue or something. Turned to face her, leaning against the railing. I drove down from the city that Friday evening, got here around 7:30. The lights were on both cars in the driveway. I knocked, rang the bell. No answer. That's strange. That's what I thought, but David's car keys weren't on the hook by the door where he always left them, so I figured they'd gone out, maybe decided to celebrate on their own first, have a romantic dinner before the party. He smiled sadly. They were like that. Youchno still acted like newlyweds, even after 3 years together. So you left. I waited until 9, tried calling both their phones. No answer. Texted them to call me when they got back. I grabbed dinner in town. You gordied catch them in the morning. His voice grew quieter. Saturday I had meetings. Inth City texted David about our Sunday golf game. We had a standing reservation at Pebble Beach. When he didn't respond by Sunday morning, I got worried. That's when you called the police. I drove here first. Everything looked normal, except they weren't here. That's when I knew something was wrong. David would never miss golf without telling me. Never. He paused, staring at the ocean. Thepoli said to wait 24 hours, but I insisted. Good thing to that storm coming. Sunday night, Janine joined him at the railing. I found Meredith's journal. She wrote about planning to announce the pregnancy at that dinner. She hoped it would help smooth things over between you and I. Davidable. The business expansion. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Do you mean she wrote about arguments, disagreements? About taking on debt for international expense? He shook his head. Slowly, Meredith never told me about any pregnancy. God, what a tragedy. The baby, to his voice caught. If I'd known if she'd told me that night. Something in his phrasing made Janine pause, but she couldn't identify what felt off. The emotion seemed real. They're gray, genuine. I'm sorry. Marcus continued, this must be incredibly difficult for you. Is there anything I can do anyway? I can help. I don't know yet. I'm still processing. I want you to know, he said, turning to face her fully. I've tried to honor their memory. The business is thriving. We did expand internationally, just like I'd planned, but I've never forgotten that it was built on David's foundation, to even established the Meredith and David Foundation. It provides scholarships for young entrepreneurships. Very generous. It's what they would have wanted. He checked his phone. Listen, I'm in town all week for meetings. If you need anything, someone to talk to help with arrangements, anything at all, please call me. Harold has my number. Ash moved toward the door. Janine found herself studying him, the successful businessman, the grieving friend, the keeper of their memory. All the pieces fit, and yet something nagged at her, some instinct she couldn't name. Thank you, Marcus, for everything you've done. Haria paused in the doorway. They were family to me. It's the least I could do. After his Tesla disappeared down the coastal road, Janine remained on the deck watching the waves crash against Therix, where her sister had loved to walk. Marcus Ashford had given all the right answers, shown all the appropriate emotions. So why did she feel like she'd just watched a performance? Marina stretched before Janine in a forest of masts and rigging, the afternoon sun glinting off the water between the boat slips. She needed to clear her head after the unsettling encounter with Marcus, to process everything she'd learned. The familiar scent of saltwater and diesel fuel brought back summers spent here with Meredith, learning to sail in their father's little Catalina. She walked past the harbor mouth toward the public pier where tourists fed seagulls and fishermen tried their luck. The yacht clubbers sat at the pier's end, its blue and white awnings fluttering in the breeze through the windows. She could see Zerver setting up for the dinner service. Excuse me, Miss Janania. Woman had emerged from the restaurant's side entrance wearing the black pants and white shirt of Hewitt staff. She was in her 50s with graying hair, pulled back in a tight bun, and nervous eyes that kept darting around the parking lot. Yes, I'm Elena, Harold's wife. Woman stepped closer, lowering her voice. I heard you. We're in town. Harold told meat lunch. I've wanted to talk to someone for years, but Harold Hefferbait it said it wasn't our business. Talk about what? Lanina glanced around again, then pulled Janine behind a boat trailer out of sight from the road. That night, the night your sister disappeared, I was closing up the restaurant. We'd had a wedding reception. Thought ran late. It must have been near 2 o'clock in the morning when I was walking to my car. Janine's pulse quickened. What did you see? Mr. Ashford's boat, that big cabin cruiser of his. I saw it leaving the private dock near your sister's beach house. The running lights were on and I could see someone at the helm. It struck me as strange. You know why strange? Because earlier that evening around 9:30, Mr. Ashford had come into the restaurant bar, had a whiskey completo. The bartender that David and Meredith had stood him up for dinner said he'd waited. But they must have gone out. There was his boat leaving their dock at 2 o'clock in the morning. Janine felt a chill, despite the warm afternoon. Did you tell anyone? Elena's face crumpled. I wanted to, when the police were investigating. I wanted to say something, but Harold, she glanced toward the parking lot. Again, Mr. Ashford pays Harold's salary has 4 years. He's been good to us, helped when Harold needed surgery, gave us loans when times were it. Harold said. I must have been mistaken that it was dark. Could have been any boat, but you're sure it was he? No boats. Miss Janine, my father was a fisherman. That was Mr. Ashford. See, no question the way it sits in the water, that distinctive blue stripe. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. But what could I say? That I saw his boat out, Lady Mabe. He went night fishing. Maybe he came back to check on them. Harold said if I made trouble for Mr. Ashford with no proof of anything wrong, we'd lose everything. A truck rumbled into Thapper King Lot and Elena's face went white. That's Harold. I have to go. Please don't tell him I spoke to you. He's a good man, just protective of our security. She hurried back toward the restaurant, disappearing inside just as Harold's pickup, parked near the marina of Physogeny, stood frozen behind the boat trailer. Mind racing. Marcus had lied about leaving at 9 o'clock. He'd been at the beach house dock at 2 o'clock in the morning, hours after Meredith and David had supposedly vanished. Before she could second-guess herself, Janine got in her car and drove the short distance to Canary Row. Marcus had mentioned his boathouse there during one of their past conversations back when he and David were planning to buy a bigger boat for client entertainment. The historic waterfront had been transformed from Steinbeck's sardine factories into tourist shops and restaurants, but some working boatists remained at the far end. Found Marcus easily a newer structure with Hashford Marine painted on a discreet sign. The main doors were closed, but a side entrance stood slightly ajar. Janine pushed it open, calling out Marcus, hello. The interior was shadowy, lit by window shy on the walls. The space was organized and clean, tool racks along one wall, boat parts stored on shelves, a workbench with maintenance equipment. His cabin cruiser wasn't there, likely moored at the marina. In the corner, she noticed a stack of industrial tarps, the heavy-duty kind used in construction. Several gallon containers lined the shelf above them, their labels faded but bleach, smell unmistakable, even from across the room. Her stomach tight and edgy, she spun around. Marcus stood in the doorway she'd entered through, looking puzzled but not alarmed. I'm sorry, she stammered. The door was open, and I thought I wanted to thank you again for maintaining the house. Hesmeld, moving past her to flip on the overhead lights. No need to apologize. I should keep that door locked, but the maintenance guys are in and out all day. He noticed her looking at the tarps and cleaning supplies. Impressive collection, isn't it? Boat maintenance is messier than most people realize. Those tarps look industrial strength of to be. He walked over and lifted a corner of one, showing its thickness. When you're cleaning fish or working on the hull, regular tarps won't cut it. Bloodfish guts, bottom paint, it all soaks through normal material. These protect the deck and dock and the bleach. He laughed, a natural sound that made her feel foolish for her suspicions. The eternal battle against fish, smell, and mildew. You go out fishing, bring back your catch, and if you don't sanitize everything immediately, your boat smells like a fish market for weeks. I learned that the hard way. He gestured to a corner where fishing rods stood in a rack, tackle boxes neatly arranged below. I've gotten more into deep-sea fishing since David's been gone. He always wanted to go after the big ones. Marlin, tuna, I do it no kind of in his memory. That's nice, Janine managed, feeling increasing glonklinter about snooping. In fact, Marcus said, his face brightening, don't you come out with me tomorrow? The weather's supposed to be perfect. Andy could use the company. We could talk about Meredith and David, share some good memories. Sometimes being on the water helps. I'll think about it. No pressure, but the offer stands. He glanced at his watch. I've got a conference call in 20 minutes, but please feel free to look around if you want. Just pull the door shut when you leave. After he left, Janine stood in the boathouse, trying to reconcile what she'd learned. Alina had seen his boat at 2 o'clock in the morning, but here was evidence of an avid fisherman who would have legitimate reasons for night boating. For heavy tarps and industrial cleaners, every suspicious element had a reasonable explanation. Shep pulled the door closed behind her and walked back to her car. More confused than ever was she, so desperate for answers that she was seeing sinister motives where none existed. Or was Marcus Sashford exactly what he appeared to be, a successful man who'd lost his best friend and business partner, now trying to honor their memory while pursuing the hobbies they'd shared? The questions followed her as she drove back to her hotel, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across Monterey Bay. Marcus moved toward the boathouse door, then paused, turning back to Janine with sudden energy. You know what? Weather's perfect right now, calm seas, good visibility. Why don't we go out to where they found the phone? Maybe we'll spot something else the diver missed. Now Janine glanced toward the harborware boats bobbed gently in their slips. Why not? I've got all my diving equipments there, and the afternoon light is ideal for underwater visibility. I can dive while you operate the boat. You still have your license, right, from all those summers your dad taught you, and Meredith to sail? Yes, but I haven't been on the water in years. It's like riding a bike. The Sea Ray practically drives. Her selfish enthusiasm seemed genuine, almost boyish. Look, I need this too. Jan and David was my best friend, my brother in everything. But blood, if there's any chance of finding more clues, or even, he paused, swallowing hard, even finding them, bringing them home properly, I have to try. The raw emotion in his voice dissolved her hesitation. Okay, yes, let's go. Fantastic. I'll grab diving gear. The boat's in slip 47 just down from the yacht club. I have some documents in my car, Janine said, remembering the folder she'd impulsively grabbed from the beach house's home office. Papers from the house I haven't looked through yet. Mind if I bring them? Of course not. take your time. Janine retrieved her tote bag from the car, stuffing the manila folder inside along with her water bottle and jacket. Late afternoon sun warmed her shoulders as she walked to the marina, trying to calm the mixture of anticipation and unease churning. In her stomach, Marcus' boat was impressive, a 32 FTC array cabin cruiser with a flying bridge, pristine white hull accented with that distinctive blue stripe. Alina had mentioned he was already aboard organizing diving equipment on the AFD Welcome. Aboard the Second Chance, he called out, offering his hand to help her onto the boat. David helped me name her, said. Everyone deserves a second chance at their dreams. The irony wasn't lost on Janine as she settled her tote bag in the cabin and familiarized herself with the controls. Marcus efficiently prepared for departure, his movements practiced and confident. Within minutes they were motoring out of the harbor, the marina falling away behind them. The coordinates are already in the GPS, Marcus said, pointing to the navigation screen, about a mile offshore near Pescadero Point. Can you take the helm while I get the diving gear ready? Janine took the wheel, the familiar feel off a boat responding to her touch, bringing back bittersweet memories. The ocean was indeed calm, with gentle swells that the sea cut through effortlessly. Marcus busied himself with tanks and regulators, occasionally calling out course corrections, mind taking over for a few minutes. Janine asked when they were halfway to their destination, I want to look through those papers while we have good light. Sure thing, take your time. She descended into the cabin, grateful for its spacious interior. The documents had shifted in her bag during the walk, and she carefully spread them on the navigation table. Most were routine utility bills, property tax statements, insurance paperwork, but near the bottoms found a bound proposal with the Innovate Tech logo on the cover. Strategic Expansion Initiative, wayslazed across the front, dated just 3 weeks before Meredith and David disappeared. Janine opened it, scanning. Executive summary. The scope was breathtaking. Offices in London, Tokyo, Singapore, and São Paulo, within 18 months projected revenues that seemed fantastical. Infrastructure investments that made her accountant's mind reel. As she turned pages, she found David handwriting in the margins. His neat script showed increasing alarm with each section, too aggressive for current cash flow. What about our existing clients? This timeline is impossible without sacrificing quality. The financial projections made her stomach drop. $3 million in liquid capital required within 6 months. Just for the London office, another $5 million for Asia-Pacific operations within the Earth. Risks were enormous, the kind that could destroy a company if even one market failed to materialize a bit. It was the final page that made her hands shake. The proposed ownership restructuring was stark in its implications. If Marcus provided the expansion capital, his ownership would increase from 50% to 70%. David would become a minority partner in the company he'd co-founded. More notes in David's writing filled the margins. Net what we agreed, need to think about the future, can't risk everything now. And finally, at the circled twice, family comes first. Janine sank onto the cabin bench, paper trembling in her grip. David had been ready to walk away from Marcus' grand ambitions, and if Meredith had announced her pregnancy that night, it would have cemented his decision. Their child would have been David's family first priority. Final reason to choose stability over Marcus's risky expansion. For Marcus, it would have meant the destruction of everything he'd worked toward, his vision for Innovate Tech's future, his dreams of building a global empire, all crumbling because his partner chose fatherhood over ambition. Everything okay down there? Marcus called from above. Fine. Janine managed, hastily gathering the papers, just finishing up. She stuffed the documents back into her bag, trying to steady her breathing. Was she really considering that Marcus, David's best friend, the man maintaining their memory, could have harmed them? The evidence was circumstantial at best, a boat scene late at night, business disagreements, financial pressures, but the coincidences were stacking up like storm clouds on the horizon. Marcus had lied about when he left he had the means. A boat, those industrial tarps. The bleach, he had the motive, millions of dollars, and his life's ambition at stake, and he had the opportunity. Trusted access to the house. David and Meredith. Janine climbed back to the deck, forcing herself to appear calm. Marcus stood aft helm, the diving site approaching on the GPS. Find anything interesting? He asked, glancing back at her. Just old bills and insurance papers. She lead, taking her position near the controls. The water looks perfect, he said, already reaching for his weight suit. With any luck we might find something that brings you closure. As he suited up, Janine gripped the wheel and stared at the ocean that had supposedly claimed her sister. The man preparing to dive into these waters was either a grieving friend trying to help, or something far more sinister, the terrible uncertainty of not knowing which made her feel more alone than she'd ever been. Even surrounded by Thieves Pacific, she thought of Meredith's journal, of her hoped that a baby announcement would heal the rift between partners. Instead, had it sealed their fate? The questions circled like the seabirds overhead, offering no answers, only the growing weight of suspicion that pressed against her chest like the ocean depths below. The GPS beeped, indicating they'd reached the coordinates. Marcus cut the engine and moved to the bow to deploy the anchor. The boat settled into a gentle roll with the swells. Approximately a mile offshore, where the water shifted from coastal green to toddyber blue, perfect conditions, Marcus said, returning to the diving platform. He pulled his weight suit from the gear bag, shaking it out. Visibility should be at least 40 feet down there. Janine watched him prepare. Her nerves, stretched taut, the business documents weighed on her mind, like the anchor holding them in place. She needed to know, needed to probe carefully. I did find something interesting in those papers, she said, keeping her tone conversational. Some business documents, mentioned plans for Innovate Tech. Marcus's hand stilled on the weight suit zipper. The change was instant and complete. The warm, helpful friend vanished like fog burning off in sunlight. When he turned to face her, his eyes had gone cold and flat. You couldn't leave it alone. His voice was quiet, almost sad. I don't know what you mean. Janine tried to maintain an expression of innocent confusion, but her heart hammered against her ribs. Don't. He stepped away from the diving gear, studying her with the calculating gaze of a predator recognizing prey. Can see it in your eyes, Janine. You figured it out, the way you've been looking at me since you came back up from the cabin, the way your hands are shaking right now. She instinctively backed toward Theradio mounted near the helm. Marcus moved faster than she expected, crossing the deck in 2 strides and ripping Theradio handset from its mount with practiced efficiency. He yanked out the connecting wires, rendering the communication system useless. That won't be necessary, he said, tossing the damaged equipment overboard. From the diving bag, he produced something that made Janine's blood turn ice cold, a compact pistol that he handled with disturbing familiarity. Sit down. He gestured to the bench seat, hands where I can see them. Janine's mind raced through options. They were a mile from shore, no radio, no one knew she was out here with him. As she moved to comply, she slipped her hand into her jacket pocket, finding her phone while keeping her other hand visible, and her body language submissive. She felt for the side button combination that would trigger the emergency SOS. 5 rapid presses, the phone vibrated slightly, confirming activation. The Coast Guard monitored these GPS distress signals. At least she prayed they did. Both hands on your knees, Marcus ordered. She complied, leaving the phone in her pocket. A few seconds later, he seemed to remember it. Your phone, take it out slowly and slide it across the deck with trembling fingers. She retrieved the phone and sent it sliding toward him. He picked it up and, without even glancing at the screen, threw it overboard, where it disappeared into the blue depths. Such a shame, he said, settling on the opposite bench while keeping the gun trained on her. I actually liked you, Janine. You were always the smart one in the family, but also the one who knew when to stay away. You should have kept it that way. Marcus, I don't understand. Stop. He shook his head. We're past that now. You want to know something ironic? I thought taking you out here would actually help clear me of suspicion. Think about it. Who would take someone diving for bodies if they were the murderer? It's like returning to the scene of the crime with a witness. Completely illogical. A harsh laugh escaped him. But I underestimated you. Didn't know you were that smart that you'd still suspect me, even with such an obvious indication of innocence. I remembered you were always the analytical one. Meredith was all heart, but you think everything through. Marcus, please, that's unfortunate for you now. His voice carried a note of genuine regret. Very unfortunate for you, but not for me. I've come too far to let anyone destroy what I've built, even someone I once considered family. Boat rocked gently in the swells, the peaceful ocean a stark contrast to the horror unfolding on deck somewhere in the distance. A seabird, cried Janine, kept there, breathing steady, clinging to the hope that her SOS had been received. Thathelp was coming, but as Marcus adjusted his grip on the gun, his expression slung into grim determination. She knew her time was running dangerously short. Marcus settled back against the gunwale, the pistol steady in his hand, his eyes had taken on a distant quality, as if he were looking past Janine to that night 5 years ago. You want to know what happened? Fine, you deserve that much. Before he trailed off, then straightened. That Friday night, I arrived exactly when I said I would. 7:30. I even brought a bottle of Chateau Margaux 2005 vintage. $2.00 nothing but the best to celebrate a theft contract. Janine remained frozen on the bench, acutely aware of fevery slight movement of the gun. They were so happy to see me. Marcus Canton. Meredith had made her famous seafood paella. David clapped me on the back sideway. We're going to conquer the world together. We sat right there in their dining room, toasting our success. His voice took on a bitter edge. Then during the main course, Meredith stood up. She had an announcement. I thought maybe They'd finally set a wedding date, but Nosh put her hand on her stomach and told us she was pregnant. 8 weeks along, the boat rocked gently and Marcus adjusted his stance without ever letting the gun wave. You should have seen David's face. It was like someone had lit him from within. He jumped up, swept her into his arms, spinning her around right there in the dining room. When he sat her down, he was already talking about the future, how this changed everything, how he wanted to build something stable, something local, a legacy for his child, he said. Marcus's jaw tightened. I sat there watching my entire life's work crumble, years of 18-hour days of sacrifices of build and innovate. From nothing, the expansion plans that would have made us giants in the industry gone because of an unplanned pregnancy. So you killed them. Janine's voice came out as a whisper. I came prepared for multiple outcomes that night. His tone was matter-of-fact. Now, as if discussing a business transaction, in my jacket pocket, I had a small vial of cyanide, colorless, odorless, perfected. Actually brought it in case the negotiations went badly, in case David completely refused the expansion. Last assert. He shifted slightly. The late afternoon sun, casting his shadow across deck. They were so happy they barely noticed when I went to the kitchen to help with. Meredith had made tiramisu while they were in the dining room, still glowing with their news. I poured 3 glasses of dessert wine. The cyanide went into 2 of them. Janine's stomach earned. You poisoned them during their celebration, I proposed. A final toast to new beginnings, I said, to the future. A hollow laugh escaped him. He died within minutes. Quick, relatively painless. They were holding hands when it happened, at least. I gathered them that the casualness of his confession made it even more horrific. He spoke of murder, the way others might discuss a difficult business decision. The rest was logistics. He continued, I had tarps in my boat, those same industrial ones you saw at the boathouse, wrapped them carefully, used diving weights from my gear to ensure they'd sink, loaded them onto the boat, using the dock cart. It was past midnight by then. Oh moon, perfect conditions. You threw them in the ocean. 400 feet of water, 2 miles past the reef. No recreational diver goes that deep. The currents there would scatter any evidence. I spent 3 hours cleaning that house with bleach. Every surface, every glass, every trace of that dinner made it look like they'd simply vanished. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket with his free hand and pulled out a small glass vial filled with clear liquid. The same batch. Actually, I always keep some on hand. You never know when a problem might need a permanent solution. You're insane. I'm practical. He held up the vial, watching the liquid shift inside. Now, it's your turn, Janine. Once you're gone, no one will ever know your phone set. The bottom of the ocean, the radio's destroyed. As far as anyone knows, you went back to San Francisco after visiting the beach house. Another tragedy for the Caldwell family. Pope saw us leave together. Harold, Elena. Harold saw me leave alone. I'll tell him. You decided not to come, Elena. He shrugged. She's learned to keep her mouth shut. Drink it. He extended the vial toward her, the gun still steady in his other hand. Janine's eyes flicked past him to the horizon, where she caught a glimpse of white and orange, a Coast Guard cutter, still distant but approaching fast. Her SOS had worked. In Marcus caught her glance and turned to look. The Coast Guard vessel was clearly visible, now perhaps 10 minutes away, but closing rapidly. Damn it. He turned back to her, his calm facade cracking. Drink it now. When you're gone, there's no proof, no evidence, just the word of a grieving friend Hotreed to help search for Bob. As he turned to check the Coast Guard's progress again, Janine saw her on lichens. She lunged forward, grabbing for the gun. Marcus reacted instantly, his superior strength evident. As they grappled on the wet deck, the vial went flying, shattering against the gunwale. You stupid. He slammed her back against the deck, pinning her down with his weight. The gun had skittered away in their struggle, but his hands found her throat. Janine clawed at his arms, her vision starting to blur. He was dragging her toward the rail, intent on throwing her overboard. The ocean waited, Bella ready to claim another victim. The sound of powerful engines grew louder. Marcus glanced up to see the Coast Guard cutter bearing down on them, officers visible on deck. He released Janine and dove for Thegan, but she managed to kick it further away. Coast Guard, stop what you're doing. Gun, put your hands up. The amplified voice boomed across the water. Within minutes, officers were rappelling onto the Surrey, weapons drawn. Marcus made one last desperate grab for the gun, but an officer tackled him to the deck. No, you don't understand, Marcus shouted as they cuffed him. She's lying. I was trying to help. We were searching for boat. More officers swarmed the boatone, immediately attending to Janine, while others secured Marcus. He continued to struggle, alternating between claims of innocence and incoherent rage. Sir, stop resisting, an officer commanded as they wrestled him. Under control. 5 years. Marcus screamed. 5 years. I built that company. They were going to destroy everything. You don't understand what I sacrificed. As they dragged him toward the Coast Guard vessel, his eyes met Janine's one last time. The calculating business man was gone, replaced by something wild and desperate. You should have stayed away, he said. You should have left it alone. Then he was gone, transferred to the cutter in custody, and Janine was left sitting on the deck of his boat, shaking and alive as the sun began its descent toward the Pacific horizon. The emergency room at Monterey General Hospital smelled of antiseptic and floor wax. Janine sat on the examination table while a nurse carefully documented the bruises forming on her throat and arms. Detective Flores stood nearby, his notebook, outpatient, but eager for her statement. The Coast Guard confirms they received your emergency SOS, he said, smart thinking, triggering it without him noticing. Your phone's GPS led them right to you. Janine nodded, wincing as the nurse pressed against a particularly tender spot. Her voice came out raspy from Marcus's attempted strangulation. He pressed it when he told me to sit down. He was focused on the gun. You can give your full statement when you're ready, no rush. But Janine needed to talk, needed to purge the horror of what she'd learned as the nurse worked. She told Detective Flores everything: Elena's revelation about the boat, the business documents showing the expansion plans, Marcus' complete confession on the boat. He said he put cyanide in their wine during dessert, that they died within minutes. Her voice broke. They were celebrating the baby. Detective Flores's expression was grimace. He took notes. His confession during interrogation matches what you've told us. He broke down completely, gave you every detail, seemed almost relieved to finally tell someone. A knock on the door. Then another detective entered, speaking quietly to Flores. His face grew even more somber as he listened. Maldwell, he said, turning back to her, our forensics team has been processing Marcus's boat. Despite his efforts with the bleach, they found microscopic blood traces in the deck. Seems DNA analysis will take time, but blood type matches your sister and David. Janine closed her eyes. The clinical confirmation, somehow making it more real. There's more. Flores continued urgently. We pulled the GPS history from his boat's navigation system. Marcus wasn't as clever as he thought. The system keeps a log of anchor points. In the night of the disappearance, his boat was anchored at the beach house dock until 2:15 a.m., then traveled to a point approximately 2 miles past Pescadero Reef. He anchored therefore for 3 minutes before returning to port. 400 feet of water. Janine whispered. That's what he said. We've dispatched a deep water recovery team. The coordinates are. They should be able to. He paused, choosing his words carefully, to recover our sister and David. The nurse finished her examination and quietly left. Detective Flores pulled a chair closer to where Janine sat. The recovery team has already reported preliminary findings to bodies wrapped in industrial grade tarps that match the ones in Marcus' boathouse, weighted with diving equipment from his personal gear according to the serial numbers. The medical examiner will need to confirm that the circumstances align with cyanide poisoning. It would have been quick. Built his empire on their murders. Janine said the words tasting bitterest their deaths, to take full control of Innovate Tech. Pushed through his expansion plans without David to all while playing the grieving best friend, maintaining their house like a shrinette. Perfect cover, Flores agreed. Who would suspect the man who spent 5 years shinoring their memory? He even established a foundation in their name's blood money. Janine reached for her tote bag, which the Coast Guard had reached aboard from Marcus's boat. Meredith's journal was still inside, slightly damp from the ocean spray but intact. She clutched Ito her chest with his detailed confession and the physical evidence. Marcus Sashford will never see freedom again. Detective Flores assured her multiple murder charges, kidnapping, attempted murder for what he tried to do to you. He'll die in prison. Bet that was cold comfort. Janine opened the journal to that final entry, her sister's hopeful words blurring through tears. Meredith had been so certain that the pregnancy announcement would bring everyone together, would remind them what truly mattered. Instead, it had Signature death warrant. She wrote that she felt uneasy about the dinner, Janine said, tracing the words with her finger. Some instinct warned her, but she pushed through it. She wanted so badly to share their joy. I'm sorry, Detective Flores said simply. I'm so very sorry. Janine thought about the baby, who never had a chance to be born. Another victim. Marcus greed, a life snuffed out before it could even properly begin. Her sister would have been a wonderful mother. David would have been the kind of father who coached Little League and read bedtime stories, all of it stolen for profit margins and international expansion. Outside the hospital window, dark clouds had rolled in from the Pacific. The first drops of rain began to streak the glass, growing quickly into a steady downpour. The same storm system that had provided cover for the Coast Guard's approach now washed over Monterey Bay. As if the sky itself was grieving, Janine held